Hello and welcome to my playthrough of the first episode of Life is Strange. Now this is a slightly older game, however this opening episode is available currently free of charge on Steam. I'm not sure if it's available on other platforms. Also, it's a game that is currently free for PS Plus owners. So if you've not played this game, go off, download the content and play it. So this is going to be a sort of a playthrough slash review. Now, I played the free episode first, was pretty impressed with it, so I immediately jumped onto Steam and downloaded the complete game, which I think is under $20 right now. In fact, it might be $15 or less. It's well worth the experience. Now, the first time you play this game, you will have a lot more fun, in my opinion, than on subsequent playthroughs, because of some of the twists and turns that are in the game. The second time you play it, you will still enjoy it because you'll get to do alternative options. Also, some of the little nuggets that are in the game you'll pick up on because you'll know what the end result of the game is. Now, I'm going to try and minimise the spoilers, but obviously there will be spoilers. Now, one of the spoilers is obviously seeing the playthrough, but the other spoiler is me just talking about the game. Now this is an interesting opening to the game where you wake up in this sort of weird nightmare reality of being stuck near a lighthouse in a terrible storm. And as you're about to find out, it's just a ridiculously powerful storm. And it's the start of weirdness going on for our hero here, our heroine known as Max. And she's a lovely little kind of geeky, cute, tomboyish sort of character. And she is a bit of a photography artiste who has returned to her kind of hometown to study under Mr. Jefferson, and we're about to find that out when this sequence comes to an end. And as I say, what really makes this game is you've got this weird cartoony graphics, which is a kind of a nice little touch and looks really good on the PC. But also the voiceover work is pretty good. The actress who plays Max has a lovely fragility to her voiceover, which I really enjoy. But the thing that really makes the game to me is the choice of music. It's a lot of music that I haven't normally heard, but it really fits the theme of the game. And if I was to summarise this game, I would say it's a bitter-sweet tale of difficult choices for a teenager. And there's some really cool stuff going on in this scene, which you will get to play more than once, just so you know. And it's a very kind of Donnie Darko sort of setup with alternative universes. And, you know, if you make a decision point, does that split reality? So you've got if I did option A or if I did option B, or is this actually time travel? There's all sorts of stuff going on. And as you can see, I'm kind of jumping in, just showing off your notebook and your phone and your satchel and stuff like that. So there's all sorts of stuff to do. Now, I actually feel the game's quite dreamlike. The controls are a little bit sluggish. The whole kind of atmosphere is very kind of dreamy. And that's an interesting philosophical debate that the game has triggered in people with how much of this is true, how much of this is fantasy. Is this actually purely inside Max's head, or is this a real thing that actually happens? And there's all sorts of debates online about it, and it's a bit of a kind of a cult following on this game, I have to say. Now, I'd heard the name and I'd heard it was quite a good game, but I'd never actually played it till about a week ago. And as I say, I really am enamoured with it. It's a fun adventure game. Now, if you're into Twitch shooters and tactical battle games and things like that, you're probably not going to like this because it's a very slow, thinky, thought-provoking game. And trust me, I don't care how tough you are, there are moments in this game which should, in theory, make you shed a little tear. There are some really emotional moments, and it can make you think, and should I have done something different? And that's one of the things that this game does really well. Max will discover that she has a special power, and that will then drive the whole game. And there are some really interesting moments where you can choose to use that power or not. There are sadly some moments in the game where basically something happens and it forces you to use your power, which I'm not so keen on, but I can see why they did it, and it works really well, and it's just a very, very minor nitpick. I mean, I think this is a modern classic, and as I say, it's not going to be for everyone because, you know, it can be a little bit sluggish and pedestrian in places, but I like it. It's Twin Peaks meets Donnie Darko, the computer game. It's fantastic, and it was by two directors, if I remember correctly, and you can actually download their commentary, which is basically a series of video clips where they talk about the game and some of their decisions and stuff like that. And I have to say, if you don't like this game, well, maybe you just don't like adventure games, but if you love adventure games, I think you'll like this. But there's no real fighting, there's no real massively difficult puzzles. There are a couple of slightly annoying puzzles where you have to think a little bit laterally, but you know, it's not ridiculously mind-numbingly brain-burning. I think you probably are going to want to play this game at least twice, because at the end there are some key decisions you need to make, and that will affect the kind of the end game that you play. You might want to play it more than that, because you can actually make lots of different decision points, and you're going to discover a little bit of a secret here. Kate, who's this upset young lady here, she's getting bullied over a video, and she has some very interesting decisions to make. Now, this is actually my third playthrough of the game, and I have to say I'm tempted to not intervene, shall we say, too much in Kate's story, but I'm finding it hard to do that because I love the character of Kate. She's a great little character in my mind. Now, there are some little fun unlocks here where you can take photos of various things. You can hunt them down. Also, when you finish an episode, you will get various sort of checkpoints where it say you did this along with X percentage of people. So it might say, oh, 60% of you chose to talk to Kate, 40% of you chose to tease Kate, or something along those lines. Now, it is the sort of game where you wander around, you look at stuff. Sometimes when you look at stuff, it will trigger the ability to interact with it or to rewind time, which is basically the power you're going to discover very shortly. Now, what I find a little bit odd about this game is there is no definitive this is the right path. The developers have been very canny about saying what they think the correct outcome of the entire game is. So again, that filters into some of the online debate as to what's correct. You know, if you do this, is that the right decision? If you do that, is that the right decision? And if you think it's the right decision, do you then discover it's not the right decision? And as I say, it can be a real brain-melty game if you want it to be, if you want to think about some of the philosophy that underlies the game. And I think that's, as I say, why it works well. The art style for me is great. I mean, it's not brilliant, as you can see. The graphics are good without being stellar. The voiceovers, I think, are really good, so well done to the voiceover talent. And as I say, the music's what's really going to make the game. Now, obviously, I can't play the music because of copyright and stuff like that. However, I believe some of the music is available online on YouTube, so I have actually included in the description a link to the playlist for the game. So just click play on that whilst listening to this, and hopefully you'll get a bit of a vibe of the game. And as I say, it's got some really nice guitar riffs and various artists doing the music, and there's a beautiful piece of music when you leave the classroom and she puts in her earbuds and the music kicks in, and it's little touches like that where I think they've done a really good job. So in the game proper, she's going to move across, lean up against the wall, and we'll get some music kick in. And you've got some nice little introductions to some of the characters you're going to interact with in the game. There's all sorts of classroom politics, boyfriends, girlfriends, girls who are a bit bitchy, but maybe they're just bitchy because they're trying to fit in. Other girls who are just bitchy because they're not very nice people. There are some weird kind of teachers, and you know, what I also like is there's a little bit of a mystery in this game, which is the Twin Peaks side of things, and you can go quite a long time not really being sure who the goodies and who the baddies are. And of course there are a couple of twists and turns along the route, and there's also some nice grey areas as well, where there's someone who you think is a baddie, but the more you learn about them, you come to realise that there's a reason for them being the way they are. And does that really make them actually a bad person, or are they as much a victim as the victims of, you know, what they're doing? And as I say, there's all sorts of little nice touches in there which really work well for me personally. I really enjoyed that. And here you go, here is our missing person, the lovely Rachel Amber, a nice young lady who seems to have posters all over the place, and she's actually, without having any real presence in the game, gonna be quite a strong character, as you will come to discover as you play through. And there are all sorts of lovely little hints and touches as to who she was and what's happened to her and stuff, and you have to play the game to find out more. And yeah, it works really well. You've also got some great characters here, like Dana, the classic cheerleader babe. There's some real fun stuff with her. And then, you know, you've got your other nerdy characters like Stella and our artistic friend, who we will be meeting shortly, whose name escapes me right now. Unfortunately, being the kind of slightly chubby kid, he is subjected to the jock's attentions in an unfriendly manner. Oh, here he is, Daniel. Yeah, great little artist, Daniel. Lovely character. Unfortunately, you know, he's not cool, so he gets picked on by people like Logan and so on. And you'll find out that a lot of these characters belong to something called the Vortex Club, and there's an interesting couple of little elements around that will develop as we play through various episodes. Now, if I remember correctly, it's 5 episodes in total. For my first playthrough, how long did it take me? Oh, I think it was about 15 hours. So, you know, pretty good value. I've played it through more than that. I'm well over 24 hours of play, and I've then got this bit, which, what is it? Almost 2 hours to play through this entire episode. So, you know, you get lots of value from the game, in my opinion. So, you know, if you can get hold of it free on PlayStation or get it cheap off Steam, I personally would recommend do it. But as I say, hopefully watching this playthrough and maybe downloading this first episode for yourself, you know, try before you buy. And if it's not your sort of game because it's too slow and too stodgy, then, you know, unless the story hooks you in, you're probably going to find the game irritating. But for me, it's very much the old sort of point and click adventure game done in great 3D cartoony style, and I just love it. I instantly fell in love with the game, and as I say, just rushed out and bought it straight away. Anyway, so Max is finally, having clicked on pretty much everything, she's going to go into the bathroom, and this is going to trigger some life-changing events to not only Max but some other characters in the game, and in fact the whole town where Max currently resides. So someone apparently doesn't like our missing person Rachel. Most people seem to like her, but a couple of people don't. And as you can see, there's lots of graffiti and posters to interact with. So some more bullying for our lovely young lady Kate, who apparently is into abstinence, so she's a good Christian girl. And unfortunately for her, there's a video that doesn't please her and her church, and it doesn't go into great detail as to what exactly happens in this video, but obviously it's something that has just, you know, caused all sorts of friction at the school. So Max is feeling a little bit freaked out after her kind of weird dream in the classroom, so she's gone to the bathroom to kind of tidy herself up, get herself centered again. And she's a sort of a little bit of a tortured artist. She's got this photo that she's thinking of entering into a competition, but she's struggling to believe in herself. So she destroys the photo, which is actually really hard to do. The directors have admitted that they maybe should have done that a bit better, because ripping a Polaroid, trust me, is really hard. Anyway, she has suddenly been distracted by this beautiful iridescent butterfly. And you will see lots of butterflies in the game, and they again have some potential philosophical meaning, and it's up to you to interpret what that meaning is. Let's just say, if you've heard of a butterfly and chaos theory, you might come to understand where we're going with this. Anyway, the butterfly is going to reveal one of the baddies of the game, Nathan, if I remember correctly, and he's a troubled young man. So as you can probably see from the dialogue that I've got popping up on the subtitles there, he's not quite right. He's a little bit paranoid, and he's got some weird business with this lady here with blue hair. We will find out who she is very shortly, but she obviously has something going on with Nathan, and looks like drugs and money and corruption are a factor here at this rather nice looking university college. So yeah, something's not going to go well, because Nathan is a little bit crazy and apparently he's armed, and yeah, things are going to go sideways really soon. So we are definitely entering spoiler territory here. So if you don't want to ruin the game for yourself, I recommend you cut away now, download the game, play it, and then come back and watch what I do. What did I do different to your playthrough? And maybe disagree or agree with stuff I'm going to say. So from now on, we are going to potentially have spoilers. So here you go. Time travel is go. Okay. Right. If you're still here, we are in spoiler territory, or major spoiler territory. So watch out. Now, if you're paying attention to the game, there's all sorts of lovely little touches with both the speech and actions and stuff, which if you pick up on, you'll come to realise have quite a bit of significance. So, as you can see, the girls are picking on Kate, and that's going to cause all sorts of angst. So that's a story thread you might want to get involved in. You know, do you get involved with Kate or not? In addition, the bullies, mainly led by a lady called Victoria, do you want to try and make peace with her or keep the antagonism going? You've got Nathan. What do you want to do about him? You've got the young lady in the bathroom that you're desperately trying to save, because you don't want her to get killed. Then there are a couple of other characters where you can get involved with them or not to various degrees. And as you can see, you can actually read up about characters. So here's Nathan. And quickly skip through, so try not to spoil too much. You've also got all these different objects that you can choose to interact with, take photos of. And as I say, that taking photos, I'm not sure what that actually achieves beyond just being nice things you can hunt down. There is actually a photo in this first scenario that it took me to the third playthrough until I actually found it. Which is a little bit frustrating. I was like, I'm sure it's over here, and it was, but for some reason I didn't click in the right area, and so I didn't get the photo op. But I'm pleased to say I did finally get it on this playthrough. So what you will have a lot of in the game is Max thinking, and you get a voiceover for that. Just then I fast forwarded through a conversation, so when you're actually replaying a scene, there is the option to press, I think it's the right button to fast forward, and then you've got the left button to rewind. So it's great that you can start manipulating time, and the designers actually talked about this as to whether this was a good or bad thing. Does that give you less or more choices? And they've actually, from testing, have seen that a lot of people, they can rewind and choose to do something different. But if you're a bit like me, you might want to try and make the right decision first time. So you might deliberately leave the choices up for a while you have a really good think about it. And even though you can rewind time to fix a mistake if you make one, you don't potentially want to do it. And as I say, if you've played through the game more than once, you will come to see the time travel thing as an interesting crutch. Is it something you want to use, or is it something you want to avoid using? And again, that's another interesting decision point in the game. Is this actually a force for good, or are you messing with the laws of nature when you shouldn't do? And as I say, there are all sorts of little touches all the way from this opening scene all the way through to the very final scene. There are all sorts of little touches which you won't pick up on your first playthrough, but the more plays you have, the more you start seeing the little bits dropped in here and there, and also you will interpret things differently. Like, you know, someone saying something will mean something on your first playthrough, but on your second playthrough will mean something different. And as I say, with Kate, I was tempted not to interact with her much, but I don't know, I just like her as a character. I think she has a very sort of believable character, maybe, and I don't know, I have a particular interpretation of the game where I think Max's powers come about for a certain reason, and I also believe, to me personally, there are two main threads that I think are the correct way to go. That doesn't mean I'm correct, but to me, because it's not been defined by the developers, it's correct. So in my opinion, I tend to play a sort of a paladin type goody two shoes person. I don't really like being the evil person. I mean, playing Mass Effect, the renegade choices just I find really difficult at times, because sometimes they're just horrible. So I, in the game, tend to go with the good choices. I am trying to be a little bit antsy in places on this playthrough, but I am finding it really, really hard work. So as you can see here, you've got a dialogue choice whereby once you've had it, it unlocks an alternative conversation, so you can rewind time and go with a different choice, and that triggers different options. So as I say, again, another nice little touch by the designers there to introduce you to the powers. And as I say, this first episode worked really, really well for me. It was, oh, there's some interesting stuff going on here. I'd like to hear more about what's going on. Now, the downside, as I say, where the developers have left things fairly open, it can leave you a little bit frustrated with a lack of, shall we say, closure, because they don't say, well done, you've achieved this. It's more of a, here's a sandpit, here are a couple of options, pick which one you think's the correct one. And as I say, it's a very brave move, and I think it's why the game is so popular. But as I say, I have seen negative criticism that, you know, the game can lead to some frustration where it leaves too much for you to resolve. But I mean, I love that. I love films, for example, where the ending can be ambiguous. Is it a happy ending? Is it a sad ending? Well, it's up to you. You can interpret it as, you know, the boat sails over the horizon and sinks or makes it or catches fire. You can make up your own mind. I love that sort of as an idea. Anyway, we're going to get to do a bit more time manipulation here. I'm going to pick up the hammer, and I'm not going to use it in time, so I rewind time, but I do manage to keep the hammer. So let's set off the fire alarm and rescue the lovely blue-haired lady from Nathan the Psycho. And, of course, that leads us to potential consequences. And as I say, a lot of the game is going to be about living with the choices that you make. And as I say, there are a couple of scenes a bit later on which will prey on your brain as to, are what you doing, you know, or is what you're doing something for good, or actually, despite your good intentions, you're actually causing issues. And I like that. And we get to meet a new character here, the rather unpleasant security guard, David. He's an interesting character. I really enjoyed interacting with him. You get to see some cool stuff. You've also got the principal, who again has some interesting sort of backstory to a degree. I don't think he's as well developed a character as some of the others in the game, but the principal does lead to some, you know, interesting conversations here and there. So I thought I might be able to quickly wander up here, but yeah, nope. So there are certain points in the game where, you know, if you go beyond a certain point, that's it, you're committed. The save points are are fairly well spaced apart from what I can tell, but you know, they're pretty well spaced, so I won't worry about it too much. For example, whenever you see that little kind of notepad down in the bottom left with the scribbly pen, that's the game making a save point, so definitely worth considering. Now, we've had a decision point there, so I chose to sneak on Nathan. Now, if I decide that that was a mistake, I can rewind time and give the other option. Now, I believe if you give the other option and you don't like that option and think, oh, actually I preferred my first choice, you should be able to rewind time and go with option A again. So you know, there is lots of powerful moments where you can choose to go, you know, either direction A or direction B. Where things get a little bit trickier is there are a couple of points in the game where you have multiple options and they cause multiple knock-on effects, and you have to kind of deliberately do weird things with time to solve puzzles and stuff like that. And as I said, that there aren't a huge amount of what I would call puzzles in the game. There are maybe 2 or 3 kind of main puzzles, but you know, spread across 14 hours of gameplay, I don't think that's too many. Anyway, the principal's a little bit annoyed with us because we've snitched up Nathan, and Nathan's dad is a very powerful and very wealthy patron of the school. So obviously the principal's a little bit, are you just picking on him because he's the rich boy, or, you know, did something genuinely happen? And again, that's going to lead to some fun stuff further into the game. So you can see it's a rather lovely setting, set, I guess, on the kind of northern part of America, over on the Californian side, so way out west. I want to say Oregon actually is where it's based, or an Oregon style location anyway. Now, when you're wandering around, there's a lot of this stuff you don't actually need to do to drive the story forward, but I think if you don't take the time to immerse yourself in the world, you are going to be missing out on a lot of the game. Now, as I say, because this is my 3rd playthrough, I am deliberately going for certain options, and there are a couple of interesting bits that I missed on my first playthrough that I was really keen to play on my 2nd playthrough, and it does give you a different vibe to the game. So as I say, it's definitely a game I think worth playing twice. Depends how much you love it as to whether it's worth playing a 3rd time. Now, if you want to sort of minimise your time playing, you could choose to go back into a section and replay that section, taking different choices. So once you finish the game, there is the option to reload your save, for want of a better word, and cherry pick various decision points in the game. There is also the option to find the photos without affecting your game save. There is a, collectible mode, I think it's called, where you can jump in. Now, whether that's on the PlayStation, I don't know. The main reason I'm actually covering this is because I believe it's today that the PlayStation gets this game as a freebie if you've got PS Plus. So I will actually be downloading a copy of this on the PlayStation, because it'd be interesting to see how it's different on the PlayStation to the PC. Now, this version I'm playing on the PC is not a Windows version, it's actually on Linux, or GNU Linux, and as you can probably tell by the screen capture, I ran it full screen but shrunk it down, so it's basically a 1080p output, but I slightly shrunk the video footage down just to basically help with disk space, because this is a rather large capture, being almost 2 hours. Now, basically, what I think Max comes across as is a very nosy, intrusive person. She can run around and kind of rummage through people's gear and drawers and stuff, and quite often you can do that with no implications, but there are certain points in the game where you'll be fiddling with stuff and the character will be like, hey, stop looking at my stuff, or I'm not going to talk to you now because, you know, I told you not to look at that and you did. So that's quite interesting as well, that it encourages you to rummage and do that. I'm going to click on everything, but occasionally that will actually backfire on you. And as I say, the detail in the game I think's great. I mean, is it needed for the game? Not really, but it helps you buy into the setting, and as you can see, it's got that, as I say, slightly dreamy look to it. You know, it's nice weather. You know, the colours are nice. And as I say, I'm not sure if they went with this cartoony sort of look because it was less resource heavy. I mean, this with full photorealistic rendering, I think would be pretty amazing. And it's also the sort of game that you could imagine being a film or TV series, and it would work. So yeah, it's literally an interactive TV show, and as I say, I love that, but I am aware some of my friends will not. It's far too slow, far too stodgy for their tastes. But yeah, if you're a lover of old school adventure games, definitely get this. Anyway, I'm just going to have to quickly take a drink. Okay, so we've been speaking to Justin, the skateboarder, who doesn't think we're cool because we don't know the lingo. So we've decided to cheat fate and rewind time, and then based on our knowledge of the conversation we've just had, we slip in some words, and he now thinks we know what we're talking about, which of course is a lie. And again, that's another philosophical debate. You know, with great power comes great responsibility. Should you be using your time control ability to affect real change, or is it, hey, that guy, I want him to like me, so I'm going to talk to him, find out what he likes, and then use time to tell him what he wants to hear, and therefore he'll like me. And you can do the same with the girls as well. Anyway, by speaking to various characters, you will get to learn more about various characters in the game, in particular the infamous missing person, Rachel. So it is worth talking to people and exploring from a story point of view as well. But just be aware there are many elements where you'll think, why am I wasting my time doing this? But to me, it's not a waste of time. It's part of that immersion, part of that engagement with the reality of the game. Now, if I'm going to criticise the game, one thing I'm not so keen on is Max is meant to be an 18-year-old girl. I personally think she looks a little bit young for an 18-year-old girl. Now, obviously, yeah, I'm not saying she can't be 18. You do get, you know, petite, young-looking girls. But I personally have seen some cosplay of people who sort of have a similar look, but, you know, obviously are a little bit older, a bit more mature looking. Now, the girl with the blue hair, who we're going to find out what her name is very shortly, she, to my mind, does look like a young 18-year-old girl. So that's my only criticism. However, having said that, it works quite well for the character that she's this young, naive, slightly fragile, artistic, nerdy girl. And she's struggling to be popular because she, you know, was born in this place, but she went away and she's come back to study at senior school, I guess. And she's struggling to fit in and find a place. And, you know, a lot of these characters have a history and a connection that she's missed out on. And I can't remember, is it 6 months? I think she's been at the school about 6 months. And she's struggling to find her feet when she discovers her little powers. And she's very enamoured with Mr. Jefferson, the art teacher. She also quite likes the science teacher, who you can choose to speak to or not. She's not sure about the principal. And as you can see here, you've got a choice to talk about Mr. Jefferson with some of your pupils. And, you know, there are a small amount of main characters. Obviously Nathan is a big factor, the blue-haired girl is a big factor, Mr. Jefferson's a factor, Victoria, one of the slightly bitchy girls, is a big factor, and the security guard. Finally, you have Kate. Now, some of these other characters, depending on which episode you're in, have bigger or smaller parts, but those other characters I've just mentioned, they tend to pop up quite a lot throughout the game. There are also some other fairly major characters who will appear from episode 2 onwards. They do get a little cameo in this episode 1, but you don't really get to interact with them at all. That young lady, she reappears quite often in the game, which is a nice little touch, which I hadn't really noticed on my first playthrough, but you'll spot her a bit later on in the game and think, who's that? And then, you know, she's the girl who was lying on the grass in this first episode. And again, I love little nuggets that they've dropped around the game there, where you might miss it on the first playthrough, but on the second playthrough you think, hold on, isn't that person from that scene? Or wasn't that over there in that scene? And as I say, it's fantastic fun. Now, what I also like is sometimes with the dialogue, if you happen to know the answer, you can just take a guess, get it right, great, you don't have to use your power. But if you do get it wrong, just rewind time, get the right answer. I happen to know who the photographer of the D-Day photos was, so just answered it straight away. Some of the other questions I answer right the first time is because I played the game before. And another discussion about Rachel. So that's at least 3 people now that we've I think it's 3 people. 3 people now that we've interacted with who have a connection with Rachel, and there are going to be more people who have a connection with Rachel. And as I say, Rachel is, the Twin Peaks character, the young, attractive lady with a dark secret, potentially driving the whole story. And what that secret is, you will find out as you play. As I say, I got to be a little bit careful laying it on thick about Twin Peaks, because it's Twin Peaks-esque. It is not Twin Peaks. It's, major spoiler, her dad didn't do things to her. Anyway, as you can see here, I've run back to the fountain because I forgot there are various points in the game where you can just sit down, get a nice little guitar riff in the background, and you get to talk to yourself a bit and sometimes reveal a bit more of the story. And then once you've done that, you just sit there and the camera sort of pans around and shows you different aspects of the environment you're in. And it's just a lovely, totally unnecessary touch where you can just sit down and get to view the setting from different angles. And I just think it's a lovely little touch. And they do talk about a lot of this in the director's commentary. So I know it's available on Steam as a free DLC once you've got the game. I'm not sure if you can download it if you've just got the episode 1 content, so you might have to actually buy the game. But yeah, it's definitely worth a watch in my opinion, and just add a couple of little extra minutes of entertainment. So I'm trying to get the fountain to trigger here, and for some reason I'm being a total dweeb, so I will get it in a sec. So we've got another photo op, here you go. So if you want to hunt down all the photo spots, it's something that can take quite a lot of time, or it can be quite easy like that. That was relatively easy. Anyway, I think I'm almost done here. There is a gentleman I believe I haven't spoken to over on the right here, and then that's pretty much going to be it for this area. Now, there is potentially other bits in the area that I could have interacted with, so that's something you could discover for yourself. So I'm not doing 100% spoilers, but as I say, if you've watched this far and you're worried about spoilers, well, I have spoilt quite a lot already. I'm trying not to do massive spoilers, but something might slip out, and I do apologise. But hey, it's the sort of game, as I say, that your first play will make a big impact on you. So try and avoid finding out stuff, and then come back and watch this and see how you feel your impression of the game is versus mine. Now, when you're playing the game, as I say, there are some interesting ideas, I think, scattered around, and you might twist and turn a bit on what you think's going on. Now, I started to form an opinion as to what was going on, and I thought, yeah, but that doesn't feel quite right. There's got to be a twist. And then a bit later on in the game, I thought, hold on, is it actually this? And that second guess was actually ended up being correct, and I got that a little bit earlier than maybe the game was expecting me to. Doesn't really affect the gameplay, because a lot of the gameplay is just discovering what's going on, and as I say, choosing when to do a rewind to change events. And as I say, that's why some people are not so keen on the game, because there are a couple of choices where you're sort of, is this really a choice? And as I think you're missing the point of the game. A lot of the game is about the journey, not the destination, in my opinion. However, the destination's pretty cool as well. I really enjoyed the ending where I got asked, what are you going to do? And I thought, oh God, what am I going to do? Because on the one hand, I think I should do this. Surely that's the right decision. And then there's another part of me saying, no, that doesn't make any sense. Surely it must be that. And I really enjoyed that. And having played it in one big stint, I played the first episode, I downloaded the game, I think I then ate, and then I got back into the game and I played it non-stop with basically no break. So pretty much 10, 11 hours straight, all the way through to the end. So as I say, it got its hooks into me and I really, really did enjoy it. And as I say, it's a bit of an emotional roller coaster. I mean, it's a genuinely touching game. As I say, there are some really, really awkward points in the game where you're just really torn up. Like, do I do this or do I do that? And either option's not good. I mean, it's like I don't really want to do either of these choices. And then there's another choice where, you know, choice A is just really, really horrible. Choice B is good, but it's still going to impact you, unless of course you're a stone. So, you know, if your heart is a stone and you're cold, yeah, it is after all just a game. But if you choose to let the emotions get to you, it can be quite a weepy game. As I say, it's very bittersweet, very bittersweet. As I say, the journey is interesting, not always comfortable, and the destination, yeah, that's a real doozy. So enjoy the final scene or final part, I guess, of the game in episode 5. So we're, I don't know, about halfway through my playthrough, and it's going to be really hard for me to keep talking without going into major spoilers. So it's going to be difficult for me to keep going without risking letting something slip. So final warning on the spoilers. Now, we've interacted with a character there who, throughout the game, there are some fun little bits where you can choose to interact with her or not, and it's quite amusing when you do, but equally, you know, do you need to? Maybe not. Well, welcome to Queen Bitch Victoria. Now, she's a really easy character to hate, particularly in this first episode. She's a real nasty piece of work. But again, in classic kind of shades of grey, there's a little bit more to Victoria than this Queen Bitch Ice Queen that we're dealing with here. And you will, depending on how you interact with her in the game, will depend on your opinion of her as a character. As I say, with many of the options in this game, you've got option A or option B. Some of the characters, you've got kind of maybe as many as 4 options of how you deal with them. So that's fun. Now, our janitor figure here, he's an odd fellow. I always like talking to him because he's just weird. But he loves animals, so, you know, in my mind, there's not much wrong with him. And he is going to let us get a little bit of payback on Victoria, and you can choose as to, you know, how you deal with that. Do you wish to pay back Victoria and rub it in her face, or, you know, do you want to offer a little bit of an olive branch to her and try and get her back on your side? And that is an interesting character. Victoria, I think, is a fascinating little character in and of herself. And as I say, that's why I could see this being a fantastic TV or film where, you know, there are multiple aspects to many of these characters, and depending on how you play will depend on which aspects you see. And of course, if you just play it once, just making a decision, never rewinding except where you have to, you will have a totally different opinion than someone who tries all the different options and then picks the one they actually like. So yeah, there you go. Now, Victoria, I guess, is your main competition in the world of photography at the school. She actually studies hard, tries hard, looks glamorous, wears nice clothes and all that good stuff. And as I say, she's not a very sympathetic character in the first episode. In fact, the game does a really good job at making a lot of these characters not that sympathetic in the first episode. And then as you play through the game, some of the characters become more likeable, shall we say. And yeah, Max is feeling a little bit righteous here, having got some revenge on Victoria. So here we go. How are we going to deal with her? Are we going to be nice or are we going to be a bitch? Let's see. What did I go with?
Hey, Victoria. What do you want, Max?
Yes, I went with the bitch option. So, yeah. Yes, a little bit of payback. So, political shenanigans are go. And I love the face on Victoria there where she's like, oh my god, I've been hoisted on my own petard. And of course, Max is torn up with guilt. Maybe she shouldn't have done that. But hey, we don't have time to be soft. We have a mission to get on with. So this is where we get to discover the girls' dormitory. And there's quite a lot in here that you can actually do, to be honest. We will revisit this location on a couple of occasions. You've got these lovely little kind of bits outside your room where you can potentially interact with them. There's also a fun scene a bit later on in the game revolving around the ladies and also the washrooms, and yeah, that's for the future. You get to have some interesting dialogues. There's some really fun little references to films and art within the game. And here's another thing you can choose to do. Do you choose to interact with Kate's room? You know, you can leave the bitchy, bullying messages there, or you can choose to kind of put a slightly more hopeful message there. And there are a couple of occasions where you can interact with these whiteboards, and they're quite an enjoyable little kind of bit of extra detail. Now what we are doing is we are actually looking for our male friend, Warren. Now Warren has asked us to bring him a flash drive, which he's lent us, so we are going to have to try and find that. But I'm just wandering around looking at stuff first. You'll also notice that there are a lot of windows to look through, and sometimes you get something interesting from that, sometimes you don't. It's always worth having a quick peek, in my opinion. So, welcome to Max's room, where there is a hi-fi, a guitar, posters, a computer, a potted plant, a mirror, which of course is a photo op, so don't miss out on that. And there are some nice little bits in here, but I did wish there was a few more options in this room, which would have made this room even more fun. But yeah, it's a nice environment. It gives you a really good feel for who she is. She's someone who's obsessed with photography. She's still a young kind of girly girl, despite being a little bit tomboyish. She's not part of the in crowd. She's not into the high fashion. You know, she's happy with jeans and t-shirt. And there's also a lot of symbology which you might miss out on your first playthrough with stuff that you see in the game. There are lots of little nuggets that are dropped around, which on your second playthrough they leap out at you. You think, I didn't spot that. That's linked to that. Oh, that's interesting. So keep an eye out for things on your first playthrough, and then on your second playthrough you'll think, yeah, that's what that was. Didn't realise that. So I'm not going to really, as I say, go into it too much, because trying to minimise the spoilers, as I said many times already. Now, we've been lent a book by Kate. That's interesting. That will play into how we interact with Kate. Now, we get to discover someone from Max's past here, a lady called Chloe, who was her best friend forever. And we are feeling a little bit guilty because 4 or 5 years ago we left to go to Seattle, I think it was, and we sort of did a bad job at staying in touch with Chloe, and that's going to gnaw at us a bit, and we're going to see some payoff from that as we play through the game. Now, when you use the hi-fis, you get some of this lovely music. Now, in the background, I can currently hear some lovely guitar strumming. I say it's a real chillaxy sort of vibe to the game. It's very dreamlike. I really did enjoy my first playthrough, but I found my second playthrough fascinating because it's like, okay, that I didn't really spot that the first time and stuff like that. Now, with your plant, be careful about watering it. If you don't water it, it's going to die. But plants equally don't like too much water. How much is the right amount? You're going to have to play to find out. Because trust me, if you don't water the plant properly, it's not going to be a happy plant. Anyway, we are pretty much done in this room. So at some stage, I'm going to find a trigger point that leads me on to the next part of the adventure. And as I say, if you just want to speed run the game, you can skip a lot of this unnecessary stuff. And oh dear, a little bit of drama going on here. So Dana is in trouble for some reason. Now we will get to find out that it's, let's say, involves a boy, and it's very amusing. I do enjoy this. So Juliet, another one of the cheerleader girls. So slightly sarcastic. So everything's cool. That's why I've locked my friend in the room. Anyway, as you can see, apparently the boyfriend has been inappropriate with her friend, and she's found out, and so she's flying off the handle. So you are now going to get to the difficult position of working out who her name is. So too late if you didn't want to know. Now, I happened to guess that on my first playthrough, so I didn't have to rewind it. So lucky me, I forgot how I guessed it. I think maybe there is an opportunity slightly earlier in the game to learn what a name is if you're very careful. But there you go. Now, Zachary is in a little bit of trouble, and because we've had this interaction, we can now go off and do something else, which is basically go into Victoria's bedroom, which is a scary place because she is our sort of nearest thing to an arch enemy in the girls' side of the game. Obviously, Nathan currently is our main male anti-hero. So, again, lots of stuff to interact with in Victoria's room. Necessary to the game? Not necessarily. There are a couple of choices, like do you want to mess up her photos or not? Depending on what you do, could have implications. I didn't point it out before now, but up in the top leftish, the butterflies, this action will have consequences. Now those consequences could be good, could be bad, could be fairly minor, could lead to different conversation options. There are all sorts of very subtle consequences. Some obviously are bad and should be pretty obvious based on what you're doing. Others, though, you think, that's the right thing to do, and everything in the game makes you think you've made the right choice, and then you think, that choice I made 2 hours ago was the wrong choice. But equally, other choices you think, I'm not sure that's a good idea. You find out in 2 hours' time that was the right idea. But I'm not going to tell you which one's which. You're going to have to discover that for yourself. Anyway, we have discovered an email from Victoria that shows she's been up to some catty shenanigans. So, she's not a nice piece of work, Victoria. She's a character that it's easy to hate. Depending on how you interact with her, will depend on whether you hate her more or less, I guess. And as I love that aspect of the game where there are some blatant baddies, and you think about it a bit more. You say, well, are they really bad or misunderstood, or are they bad because I didn't choose to make peace with them? In fact, I antagonized them. I love that. Absolutely fantastic. Anyway, I think I'm pretty much done here. So let's wander off and resolve the cat fight between Dana and her friend. So off we go. Top right, we've got our item that we've currently got. So Juliet's going to discover that Victoria has been up to shenanigans.
Of course.
Okay, I'm having to pause to have a drink. So apologise if you've got some gurgling in the background there. Anyway, Dana, she's actually one of the in crowd. Yet she's actually quite nice to our hero Max. So yeah, the start of the game is where you can choose to try and get girls and to a lesser degree the boys liking you as a person rather than just being the geeky girl from, you know, out of town. So I'm going to be pretty nosy in the room here, and there are a couple of interesting options that I'm not going to click on. Yeah, home pregnancy test, young teenage girl. Yeah, what's going on there? So yeah, there are lots of little threads of shenanigans, dark secrets, and as I say, I like the character Dana. She's a nice, fun character who I think could have had a little bit more of the game, in my opinion. That some of the characters say they have more stuff going on than others, and interesting choice. It would be great at some stage to sit down with the team and work out, you know, what they thought the right option was, but in some ways I hope they never do, because leaving it open has led to the game being much more interesting. Now we are discovering stuff about Max here, which is quite amusing. Warren. Warren is a guy who hangs around with Max a lot. He's dangerously close to being friend-zoned, and he's a really kind of sweet, geeky guy, and lots of characters have stuff to say about Warren, and you can choose to act on various things around him, which I thought was a nice, interesting choice. Now, you can choose to look at that pregnancy kit. I've chosen not to. So, you know, you might choose to have a look on your playthrough, and, you know, that will unlock some options. Now, I'm just double checking I can't get into the bathroom, for the shower, I should say. And do I go in my room? I think I might do, just to check on some bits. Ah, yes, I wanted to check out the USB stick. So it is actually possible to plug that USB stick into your personal computer, which is another lovely little touch that, you know, they thought that, hey, what if people decide to go back to the room? They got a USB stick, they might try and plug it into the computer. So as you can see, there are a number of folders there. I didn't necessarily choose to explore further there, so I'm pretty much going to make my way slowly back to the outside world so I can interact with Warren, and that's going to trigger some fun little bits which will see us into the home stretch of episode 1. So we're well over the halfway point now. We are discovering quite a lot about the world, various characters, what they think of Max, what they think of each other, who are the potential good people, who are the bad people. And as you see, Warren, he's sort of one of the good guys. He is rooting for Max, and Max and Warren have a really, really good relationship. And as I say, as part of the gameplay, you can explore what that relationship is. Is it friend zone? You know, you got a boy, you got a girl. Could it be something more? And that's one of the choices that you might be able to explore. And here you go. Here we get our interaction with what is it? Elisa, is it? Alyssa. There you go. So you can sometimes chat to Alyssa, and there you go. We have now become a hero. We've actually helped someone. We're not just using our power for our own gain.
No problem.
Okay, so she's a great fun character because she is one of the not cool girls. So there's about 4 or 5 of you, I think, where you're not part of the in crowd. And you can choose to be friendly with the in girls. You can choose to be friendly with the kind of geeky girls. You can try and be friendly with everyone. And using your power, that's going to be easier than not using your power. But the boys, you don't really get to interact with the boys that much. It is more focused around Max and her story, and therefore interacting with the girls. So we are leaving, and for some reason Kate's lurking here, and it's like, oh, what's going on there? Well, she is about to get ambushed by security, and something's going on. She has done something to upset security. Now, you can choose to intervene or not. I chose to jump in and defend her. Was that the right choice? You'll have to find out. Anyway, she is pretty traumatized, obviously, by this. He's not too impressed by the fact that we've come to her aid. But she's very impressed. She's really, really pleased with us.
I think you scared him for once. I have to go, but thank you. It means a lot. Anytime.
That's just some really good animation. I think some of the animation is kind of easy to miss if you're not looking for it. Things like the head tilt and the way the eyes move and the little smile. No one in this game has a tired face, so it's great. Anyway, we're now in the car park zone, and this, as I say, really does lead us into the kind of final scene of episode 1, where we get to leave the school and start to get into the story proper. And I think this is a lovely introduction to the game. You get to see the environment, you get to see most of the main characters, you get to feel the vibe of who Max is and what's going right for her, what's going wrong for her. And even the cool girls, they can be impacted by this. So Juliet, she's discovered her boyfriend's not the guy she thought he was. So even the cool girls, can get bullied and torpedoed. Anyway, do you want to rise above or join in on that? That could have been a much more interesting theme to discover, where you could deliberately be a little bit of a stirrer, maybe deliberately cause a rift between Dana and her friend. That could have been interesting. Maybe that's going to be something they might look into for Life is Strange 2, which apparently is coming. I believe there's talk of it being a prequel rather than a follow-on. That could be interesting. Anyway, there's some lovely little interactions in the car park here, which again are very easy to miss. I think I did miss one on my first playthrough. Can't remember whether I did it in this playthrough or not, but make sure you have a good look at things in this game, because if you miss them, you'll get to the end and it'll say, oh, 70% of people did this, and you're one of the 20% of people who didn't. And then, the other percentage, 10%, did something different. So some entitled jerk has parked in the handicap bay, and it's wound up Max. And she spotted a cute doggy. Yay, cute doggy. Oh, well done. He looks a little bit, a bit Cujo. Yeah. Okay, yes, I believe I did interact with this bit, so yeah, a layer of dust begging for a finger, so let's draw on it. I love little touches like that. I'm not sure what the consequence of that is. Apparently there is a consequence. I can't remember what the consequence is just now. Yeah, maybe I haven't done that before. Anyway, lots and lots of posters, and a big red SUV, and also Warren, who apparently has a new car.
Look at Warren and his way back.
So Warren is
He's a brave man.
very pleased to see me. I'm unfortunately, for Warren, absolutely oblivious of his excitement at seeing me. So I will go over to him soon, put him out of his misery, poor thing.
And there's Warren. Did he actually buy
Oh, friend zone denied.
Here's your
There you
flowers.
go.
Thanks.
He's a great character. I love the Warren character. He he.
Old school.
I think we could say he's got a little bit of a candle. He's holding a candle flame for our young lady here, Max. And, you know, there are lots of conversations around Max and Warren's relationship. And, yeah, but there are some nice, interesting twists and turns on the road where things can go different directions depending on how you deal with it. Yeah. Now, he's a sort of science nerd guy, but he's relatively cool with it, I guess, for a geeky kid. But yeah, we're about to have some consequences from some of our earlier decisions come to haunt us in a short while. And we also finally get to find out who the girl with blue hair is. So, spoiler alert incoming.
Hardcore. So you must use a computer
So,
to draw.
as you can see, lots and lots of dialogue. Kept the voiceover artists very busy on this game. I believe the two female voice artists did quite a lot of the voices in the game, and I think they did a pretty good job at that, because it's not obvious that some of the characters are the same actress. So well done. You know, the artists, the audio, the music, the voiceover, everything I think is on point with this game. There's very little not to like the game for, from, in my opinion, a technical point of view, as long as you're happy to accept this slightly cartoony art style. Anyway, yeah, we looked at the USB stick, so we know about various shenanigans with his USB stick, and you get some great dialogue about films of variable quality and taste. Anyway, should be any moment now where we get interrupted. Maybe it comes a little bit later than I remember, but it's pretty soon. Yeah, Max is concerned. She's come to realise she potentially can rewind time. This is obviously not a natural thing. She's witnessed the death and, for want of a better word, rebirth of a young lady, traumatised by the bully with the gun. So she is a little bit on toes here. Ah, here we go. Here comes Nathan. He's not very happy with us. And, yeah, he's pretty sure we were hiding in the bathroom. And, of course, he knows he had a gun. We know he had a gun. And he's threatening us, which Warren, bless his cotton socks, isn't so keen on. So he will valiantly intervene. Let's see how that works out for him, shall we? Oh dear, poor old Warren. Bit of a headbutt for his troubles. Oh dear, and Nathan is starting to lose his temper. Oh, hold on, it's that douchebag from Twin Peaks. Yep, blue-haired girl is our BFF, Chloe. Anyway, whilst Warren gets beaten up, we thank him for his chivalry by jumping in the car with Chloe, and we escape. And security turn up a little bit late. So anyway, Chloe, she's our ex-best friend, and we get to discover that she's not a happy young lady. She's quite sarcastic, and in this episode she has an element of edginess that makes her a little bit hard to like. Trust me, as the game goes on, you will see different sides and aspects of Chloe, which might explain why she is the way she is, and you may choose to come to like her a bit more than you do right now. And again, I think that's something the game does very well, where it will set you up with a kind of an opinion of a character, and then over the course of gameplay subtly shift your opinion. Now, you might still think someone's an arse, but you might go, yeah, but I understand why you're an arse, and I really like that. I've mentioned it before. So I've had a fair bit of praise on the game. As I say, the controls been a bit sluggish, some of the decisions feeling a little bit, well, does it really matter? Some bits I would have liked to interact with that you can't interact with. That's it. But really, none of those things are a major issue. I mean, this is a sort of a 9 out of 10 sort of game for me. You know, even the bits that are bad are not that bad. But the game goes on for quite a while, as I say, well over 24 hours with 2 playthroughs at this point. And I'm happy to play through again the third time. Now, I'm not going to run a load more episodes. This video is going to be pretty much it. But I do feel it's a game that if you haven't played, you need to experience it. And as I say, if you're on PC, you can get this episode for free. Try it. If you don't like it, it's not cost you anything beyond a bit of your time. And there'll be bits of it that you will like, I think. It might be just watching this video is enough for you. You think, yeah, I'm not interested. That's your choice. Knock yourself out. I think you're making a mistake. You're missing out on a great gaming experience. But, you know, if we all like the same thing, it would be a really boring world. Anyway, Max has discovered that her favourite analog camera is broken. So we are going to try and fix it. We are going to go back to Chloe's childhood home, and if you haven't actually picked up on it, Chloe's biological father is no longer with us, and there's a really cool bit in the game around that particular element of Chloe's background, which I really enjoyed playing, and I hope you, if you decide to get the game, you discover that for yourself and form your own opinion around the Chloe backstory. And as I say, some really, really cool elements. Anyway, a little bit of a cut into her bedroom, and she's definitely no longer the sweet little thing that Max was. She's more grungy, more punk, more angry, more druggy. A troubled child, and Chloe's story is interesting because you might recognise this photo from a particular poster. Yep. Anyway, this is the start of the mystery unravelling. Chloe had a strong attachment to our missing person. In fact, I think there's a strong angle to say that Rachel was Chloe's love of her life. It's played in a slightly ambiguous way, where maybe it's just her new best friend forever. And we're starting to hear some of Chloe's backstory. She lost her father about the same time. She lost her best friend because Max moved away. She then discovered Rachel. She's also now lost Rachel, and her stepdad doesn't have a good relationship with Chloe. So she's a troubled young lady, and as we go through the episodes, as I say, you will find Chloe's antics either spoilt brat, or you'll come to have some empathy and pity for Chloe, and she could well become your best friend. She's a great character. I think she's got great animation. She's got some really cool dialogue. She does unfortunately have to say a hell of a lot of bad words. But yeah, she is very wallowing in self-pity at this stage, and yeah, she is desperate, absolutely desperate to find Rachel, and it's going to be some interesting stuff around that. You are investigating a missing person, which is part of the secret behind what's been going on in this town. Anyway, we need to put on a CD and then go off and fix our camera. So we can choose to interact with the room more or less than required. But basically the main trigger point is you play the CD, you can leave the room and go off and do stuff. And I love this music as well. Another great soundtrack. And whoever picked out the music, I mean, big props for you. It really sets the mood. Music has a way of cutting through and invoking a sort of mental image, and the wrong soundtrack at the wrong point will change your opinion of a particular scene. And very whimsical, very bittersweet soundtrack really builds on what's already in the game. And yeah, I just love it. Being far too arty and lovey for some people, but yeah, it's just a beautifully crafted game. Hardly anything wrong with it, apart from, say, maybe being a little bit slow and stodgy for some people. But yeah, I love all that. So by being nosy, you can often get some really cool insights as to the motivation of characters and what's happened to them. Now, that is Chloe's dad. As I say, he's no longer with us. He died tragically in a car crash. And that's going to lead to some very interesting stuff later on in the game. I have to be aware. Now, I flicked through those photos a little bit too quickly. But yeah, Chloe is a little bit wild, a little bit unruly. But, you know, her heart's in the right place, really. So I'm wandering around here, and I actually did discover something I've been looking for ages, which is one of the options, which is to deal with the bird who flies into the window. And for some reason I just missed it on my first two playthroughs. I knew it was in here somewhere, but I just couldn't find it. So anyway, you can choose to ignore the bird or do something about it. So I've rewound time, which hasn't moved me away from the window. So I'm going to quickly open the window, and the bird, rather than flying into the window, actually flies into the room. So, yay me, saving the animals. And I'm sure that bird would make a right mess of a room. So I was hoping I could persuade it to leave the room, but sadly, it would appear not. So anyway, time to be a bit nosy. And then we'll go downstairs and try and get the tools we need to fix the camera, which will lead us on to, you know, the closing elements of this first episode. So the nosier you are, the more likely you are to find out some backstory, which will maybe influence anything. We haven't quite worked out who the stepdad is yet, but you know, if you're a sensible games player, I'm pretty sure you've worked out who he is by now. But Max has not quite pinned down a name to go with the person. But she made an interesting observation there that Chloe's not a big fan of her new stepdad, but Max has seen some evidence that maybe he's not all bad. Now, is that true or not? There's not much evidence of it. He's a bit of a bully, he's a bit paranoid. Play the game, do different choices, you'll find out who he is, what makes him tick. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Is he maybe a bit of both? Find out for yourself. It's a lovely bit of exploration in the game as to find out who the stepdad is. Also to find out what's motivating people like Victoria, for example, and what's motivating Chloe and Max as well. Some really, really cool little interactions. So lots of little bits where you get to do flashbacks, some pointless interactions. Just lots of lovely little touches everywhere. I'm going to be repeating myself a lot, I know. It's a long video and you can't really heap enough superlatives onto this game. It's an absolute classic. I say, I'm hoping from watching this you've worked out whether this is or isn't worth your time to download and play. For me personally, I think it would be a shame for you not to give it a go. But, you know, if you're not into this sort of game, you're not into this sort of game. But the artistry, the direction, the storytelling, okay, in places it is cliched, in places it is a little bit obvious, but the whole package is just brilliant. So well done, and thank you Square Enix for publishing the game. Now, with regard to part 2, I believe Square Enix is still the publisher, but potentially it's a different developer, which is a little bit weird. So I'd like to find out a little bit more about that, because it would be a shame if the second game doesn't work as well as this first game did. Now, I'm going to be looking for more info on that. At the moment, it's pretty much, I think, 1 or 2 screenshots of, yes, we are working on something, yes, it will be coming out. I'm hoping they continue to support Linux, because there are a growing set of game publishers bringing out really good games on Linux. And, you know, whilst you can use Wine and Steam on some games, it doesn't work for all. And I'm really enjoying playing some of my Steam collection on Linux. You know, it's a huge step forward compared to, 8 years ago, where sometimes just getting Linux to run on kit could be a real pain if you wanted to do this sort of stuff. I mean, it was fine for just general web browsing and server stuff, but for playing games, it was very behind the curve. Now, talking of which, Vulkan is a great new graphics engine. Or drivers, a bit like OpenGL and stuff like that. I'm looking forward to seeing how that develops, because there's some really good support for Vulkan in Linux, and if game developers write for Vulkan, it will work across Mac, it will work across Windows, it will work across Linux, and we won't have this really horrible situation where games work in Windows but nothing else. I'm looking forward to those days. Now, talking of which, there are a few games that I do have to boot into Windows right now to play, and I'm looking forward to where that's no longer the case, because, to be honest, it's a bit of a pain. Anyway, before we get too sidetracked by computers and graphic engines, let's get back to the game. So, we've discovered that Chloe she's referred to as our pirate friend. She is a slightly mischievous little imp, and she has got Max in trouble in the past, for example, drinking Joyce's wine. And it's interesting because she is the sort of girl that in reality, I don't know, she would maybe be fun to be around, but maybe sometimes a little bit high maintenance. And that's an interesting aspect that gets explored in the game, as to how much of a friend are you to Chloe. You know, so far we've rewound time to stop her getting shot by Nathan. How much more are you prepared to do for her? You know, that's going to be fun. Anyway, we're coming up to one of the points where you have to use your power. This is a sort of a, without your power you can't progress beyond this scene, so I'd rather they'd minimise those. It would have been nice if we could have done something slightly different. So I am going to potentially try that on here, because I'm pretty sure I've tried to do something different, but it just doesn't work, if I remember correctly, until you use your rewind power. Then you can do what I'm about to do, which is turn on the, tumble dryer, let the tools fall to the ground, and then pull out a sheet of cardboard, which the tools have fallen onto, to get your tools back. Now, if I remember correctly, you can't slide that bit of cardboard under the desk until you try and get hold of the tools, and then realise it's not going to work and have to switch to winding back time to enable the option to appear. Now, there are bits in this area that you can choose to look at or not. I've chosen various options and I'm now leaving. In your playthrough, you might want to explore some different options, not look at certain things, look at other things. And sometimes just subtle little differences like that can actually make a fairly major difference to your experience of the game. And as I say, even choices made right back here in episode 1 can have significance later on, I think. So again, really well done. Reminds me of the best of other systems, like Mass Effect when it was going great, Dragon Age was going great, and to me that's a compliment to put this in with that, because two of my most favourite games are Mass Effect 1 and Dragon Age Origins. This is right up there with those games. Where would I place it related to those two? A close third, I think. It's for me probably Mass Effect 1, followed by Dragon Age Origins, followed by this. But we're talking degrees, kind of 9.5 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 9.1 out of 10, that sort of thing. Anyway, Max is a little bit bummed out because she can't fix her camera. That triggers us into looking at photos, and Chloe spots something and thinks, hold on. Yeah. She's worked out that we were in the toilets where Chloe should have got shot. Yeah, so nice little plot twist, and that Hella, get used to us saying that. If it annoys you now, it's going to annoy you for the entire game. And there's a nice little nod to that in one of the episodes, so enjoy that moment when it happens. Anyway, we are starting to connect with Chloe here, rebuilding those bridges that we burnt 4 or 5 years ago. Now you can choose to let Chloe know that you knew who she was or not. I think I went with I didn't. Yeah.
I couldn't see straight. I don't blame you, Max. Like you said, it's been that kind of day.
Yeah, so Chloe's now aware that maybe we know a little bit more than Chloe's comfortable with. And of course, Chloe knows we're a little bit of a goody two-shoes, so she's going to give us a little bit of light interrogation. And yeah, she has an opinion about that.
Like who? Like anybody. Stop stalling, sister. The principal. But he didn't seem to believe me. The principal?
Yeah, she has a little bit of a problem with male authority figures. Hardly surprising when your dad died in a horrific car accident when you're age 14. So anyway, we are going to need to think about leaving this area soon, but we get a nice little scene first where we get to interact with Chloe, and I just love this bit. This is a lovely, touching moment.
I know it was your birthday last month.
Now again, really subtle little animation there, which, if you think about it, her dad died when she was 14. It's her dad's camera. She chooses mentally to give it to us. So yeah, that was a great little bit of animation where she pauses and shrugs her shoulders. To me, it says quite a lot without saying anything. So yeah, she's now going to be typical little teenager. Now there's some great stuff here where Max is awkwardly geeky. Anyway, Chloe's boogieing away. Max is feeling a little bit awkward. And of course, photo opportunity can't be missed. Uh-oh. Yes. David is home and he's a little bit annoyed with his stepdaughter. And of course, good job you haven't upset David earlier in the day, because that would be unfortunate. Oh yeah, there was that incident with Kate, wasn't there? I love the way she's got her hand like, where the hell am I meant to hide? I'd say, if you're not looking for these little bits, I think some of your enjoyment of the game is going to go. Subtle little animations like that, I think, are just, great little touches that just lift the game. Gotta love the attention to detail. Anyway, good job you can rewind time. It allows us to hide in the cupboard here.
1 second. My bra is stuck. Shit.
What's going on in here?
Jesus, I'm just trying on clothes. You're so friggin' paranoid.
Yeah, now David, he's ex-military. He's maybe suffering a little bit of post-traumatic stress, and he's a guy trying to do right, allegedly, but he is a character it's easy to dislike, and he's got some weird stuff going on as well. And I like that about the game, that the people you like have weird stuff going on, the people you don't like have weird stuff going on, and it's, is that person I like actually a baddie? Is that person I think's a baddie actually a goodie? Fantastic. Anyway, I chose to be noble and rescue Chloe from her father. If you do the other option, you get a different screen here, and therefore a different interaction with David. And again, that could have implications further down into the game. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Anyway, Chloe's feeling a little bit braver, care of Max, and yeah, she's got some real attitude problem towards her stepdad.
If I see you here again, you'll learn all about
So, yes, what's Chloe been up to? Yeah. Oh dear, she has a gun. What could possibly go wrong? Well, we'll find out. Now, she definitely has an issue with men. So, yeah. There you go. So, we've made Chloe very happy, it would appear.
Anyway, let's sneak out the window. There is one cool place we can hang in this hick hole.
Okay, so I could rewind time, interact with David a different way. I'm pretty sure I choose to live with my decision and move on. You can interact with Chloe as I've done here, or you can choose just to leave. So, I chose to have a chat with Chloe because normally I just leave at this point. So I just felt like mixing it up and seeing some extra options, which is great. That even on your third playthrough, if you can potentially be still discovering some new bits. So depends on how thorough you are, I guess, on your playthroughs as to how much you see of the game. On Steam, I think there are about 60 achievements, I want to say, and I think up to this third playthrough I've unlocked about 40, so I've got about 20 more to go. There are lots of bits in the game where you can do these photo ops, and it's quite easy to miss some of them, particularly if you're sort of doing a little bit of a speed run through the game. So take your time, soak up the ambience, and appreciate this gem. So anyway, we are now definitely approaching the end of the game. End of the episode, and it does a beautiful job at compartmentalizing the game into 5 separate little stories that all link into each other. It does have that TV thing of previously on Life is Strange, and give you a little preview. You then get to play the game, and then on the end you often get a nice little cutscene leading you into the next game. But I do like this sequence. We get to return to the scene that we encountered right at the start of the game, where there was the big storm, and yet in this particular instance, we've got a beautiful, dreamy environment, totally different to that savage, stormy location we first discovered on loading up the game. So anyway, you can look around for bits. There are potential things to take pictures of. There are lots of things to interact with, and I know there's something around here I want to interact with, but for some reason I can't find it, so I will have to come back to this location, which has added a little bit to the game. And as I say, it is very easy to soak up hours if you're not careful running around looking for bits. So just be aware of, do you want to get through the game quickly, or do you want to experience all of the richness, and you can balance the time of play up against the quality of play. And I just love the lighting effects. If I remember correctly, I've got this game set to max detail, max anti-aliasing, tweaked the gamma slightly, so there are quite a few little graphical options you can play around with, and there's lots of nice little hidden things like this weird set of symbols behind the building, so be on the lookout for things like that. They are frequent occurrences, and there are various mysteries which I'm not sure if they have any purpose beyond they're just something there to catch your attention, make you think that there's going to be something later in the game. Other bits look fairly insignificant, and they are actually in fact significant later in the game. So I do like the fact that they're, as I say, scashing these little nuggets around, and sometimes they're things that progress the story and move into new interesting areas. Other times they're just purely there for colour. Anyway, this is the area that we live in. It's a very cute area. I'd imagine it's a little bit unpleasant in winter, but as it's sort of late summer, it's a beautiful day and a great view. And yeah, we will get to experience that in a bit, because I've just remembered there's something I need to do. There is a photo op that for some reason I missed, and it's frustrating me. I know it's down here somewhere. Can't quite remember where it is, but worry not, I will find it. There's also some weird writing on the slats there, which I was hoping if I could get the right angle, I could actually work out what it was saying. And I think I give up in the end. But yeah, there is obviously something written on that board. It could be an interesting message. Anyway, the little butterfly gives me a clue that there's something around here I should be looking for. And yep, another opportunity to get a picture of a bird. Now, is it the same bird? Yes, it's the same bird that we rescued from the bedroom. And yeah,
They haven't updated this sign
that
since the
could have
1980s.
significance, or it could be nothing. Anyway, let's run back up to the top. So as she goes there, wobbling around with her arms, delicate little thing she is. Anyway, look at that. That's a lovely view. I mean, how can you not like that? That's great. And some of the lighting effects, like the shadow coming off her head, very subtle. Hopefully you can spot it on the video. Looks great. Anyway, another photo op, and time to trigger the end scene. So it's quite a long scene, so enjoy what happens. And I really loved the way this episode closed down. It really, as I say, drove me into thinking I want to see what happens next.
Have a seat, Pete. You're in a good mood. Seeing my step dork get played makes me happy.
Anyway, we have a little bit of a discussion here.
And
Talk a little bit about what's happened to her since we left, what's happened recently, and it's going to trigger, as I say, the very final scene, and then we end up with a nice little kind of end sequence that leads us into what's going to be the end, literally the kind of closing credits of the game. And I love it, the way it's bookended like that. And if it's not your game, what you do in here over an hour and a half later. Anyway, I think I've shown you enough. I'm not going to go on and spoil more episodes. I think it's a game you really want to experience for yourself personally. I've spoiled far too much already. just with episode 1. And as I say, I haven't got into any specific details, but a lot of the mystery and excitement of the game is discovering it for the first time. So hopefully if you've played the game and come back, you sort of know what I'm hinting at. If you haven't played the game and you're happy just to run through this, thank you for your time and patience, and I hope it's inspired you to go off and try the game, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I have. Anyway, yeah, we have discovered that Nathan and Chloe have a little bit of history, fairly recent, and Nathan's a little bit of a creep. He's not only slightly deranged, but yeah, he's got something weird about him. He does stuff, or tries to do stuff, with Chloe, which leads to Chloe trying to kind of extort him, I guess, for money, which leads to the gun scene in the toilet. So Chloe is a little bit of trouble. Is she a best friend that you still want to be close to, or is she just damaged goods? And as I say, the more you start interacting with Chloe, the more you realise what's happened to her, which does sort of explain a lot of what goes on in the game. But equally, it also makes you think, is she actually a character that deserves your sympathy, or is she her own worst enemy? You know, does she need to grow up? Is she, despite allegedly being the more mature girl, is she in fact the child whilst you're the adult? As I say, I love some of the psychological aspects of this game, and I like the fact that it might make you think, if you choose to. You can just enjoy it purely as it is, as a game, but I think a lot of the extra enjoyment comes around the talking about the game and what does it mean and the philosophy and all that good stuff. Anyway, we are about to have a little bit of a moment, ladies and gentlemen.
This shit pit has taken away everyone I've ever loved. I'd like to drop a bomb on Arcadia Bay and turn it to fucking...
Oh yes, something's not quite right. And we're back to where it all started. We are by the lighthouse with a massive storm, and we are about to find out a couple of interesting little bits of information. Yes, ladies and gents, there is a weird ghostly doe. What's that all about? That's a little bit weird, don't you think? Maybe it means nothing. Play the game, find out. Signage looks similar, so that's not so bad, but you know, what's going on? Why do we keep coming back to this particular place in this particular time? And the game's partly about that. So again, another fun thing to explore. This kind of graphical engine looks so simple, but if you look carefully, there's lots of particles. I mean, you've got the raindrops, you've got the leaves. The art team did a great job, and I believe they do get commented on in the free DLC by the directors, where they talk about, you know, that actually quite a lot of effort went into creating this storm scene that looks, you know, fairly uncomplicated at first glance, but all those little bits flying around, they're kind of 3D animated items, and look at that for a storm. I wouldn't want to be standing that close to a monster tornado, especially when it can throw around boats and stuff like that. And you've got to use your time powers well here. So yeah, I wound back a little bit too fast. I got a log blocking my way, but when the tower collapses, it knocks away the log, and if I can rewind time just right, I've got a little opportunity here to run through the gap before it gets sealed off again. And the doe seems to be drawing our attention to this newspaper. And when you read the newspaper, you realise that today is the 11th, which in our timeline is, what is it, 4 days, I think she just said, away in our future. So this storm is not something potentially that's just in our mind. It's now something that maybe is going to be happening in 4 days' time. Anyway, we now get the music to lead us out the game, and we get to talk to Chloe and get her to join in with what we think's going on. And, you know, are we going mad? Is this something that's actually happening? Is it something that has happened? Something that will happen? And the game, as I say, just goes from here and explores several interesting little avenues that I found utterly compelling. And the music really sets this off. It's you've got the graphics, you've got the voiceover, and then that music in the background. It just works so well, and I back to repeating myself again. So I think I'm going to shut up now and just let the game run out to its natural end. But we are going to have a little bit of extra weirdness before we disappear, and it's a great way of introducing some characters that we will get to meet sometime in the future. Will we meet all of them in episode 2? I can't remember whether we meet all of them, but there are some new characters that you should be getting ready to interact with in the future, and they have some interesting stories of their own. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Please enjoy the game. It's fantastic.